Memory transcription subject, Chief Hunter ISIF, Arxur Dominion Sector Fleet. Date, Standardized Human Time, December 13, 2136. My shuttle traversed the space that separated me from my alien pen pal. The 8,000 Dominion ships I'd summoned had arrived as well. Those were the assets I had within immediate range of the Dosur homeworld. The Arxur fleet awaited my command, requiring further instruction as to our goal. The reason why they hesitated was simple: the Federation had numerical strength that seemed fantastical. The Kolshians had sent 40,000 ships barreling into the system, or possibly more. It was greater than the initial size of Kalsim's extermination fleet. I understood what Prophet Descendant Gizl had implied about the prey powers being able to muster up numbers, if they wanted to. The invasion of Milo's system involved an overwhelming show of force, per my initial readings. The more I performed the mental math, it was striking how easy these numbers would be for their assembly. With a mere 30 species having flipped to humanity's side, that left 270 races to pull resources and ships from. If all of those races contributed 140 ships, that gave the number we saw today. It's a mere fraction of their available resources to pull from. This is the tip of the iceberg for the Kolshians' might. The Dosur's defenses were steamrolled by the Juggernaut Armada, and the human ships seeking repairs didn't hold a candle to this astronomical force. General Jones was off her hunting pedestal if she thought I could stop this assault. Even our numbers were unlikely to achieve more, beyond delaying the Federation's end goals. But since I was already here, risking my cover, there had to be an attempt to rescue Felra. Felra is in an old Federation spot. A space station, which has a separate area for humans awaiting repairs, I muttered to myself. I was grateful that my shuttle had no company, so I could muse over how to locate her aloud. The Arxur ships around me grew restless, now that I was in the system. They expected orders from their chief hunter soon, and it was a matter of time before the UN or the Federation noticed our arrival too. Was it my sentimentality that was telling me to interfere? My viewport zoomed in on Milo. The Dosur homeworld wasn't reflecting any antimatter damage. The Kolshians had the planet comfortably under control. After the Federation failed to subdue the Maziks, they'd ramped up their efforts. I could see the enemy sending shuttles down to Milo's surface, and realized that their goals were likely re-education. All Arxur ships, listen up. We are here at the request of the United Nations, who have the means to feed all of us forever. I barked into the Dominion's encrypted feed. Some of you were there on Earth, and you remember how well fed you were. For that reason, I expect your hunting efforts to avoid Terran-affiliated races. We know it will be worth the pittance of restraint. Now engage with the Federation attackers, at once. Our ships surged forth out of various gravity wells, swarming the handful of attackers allocated to outer stations. I was bent over my holopad, and scrolling through a poorly secured military personnel database. Inspectors were considered part of the Space Force on Milo, as far as I remembered. That meant I could figure out which outpost Felra was assigned to. Plasma munitions flashed across the void, and the element of surprise allowed us to pick off any stragglers. Dosur defenders, complemented by an array of UN ships, seemed to pause their desperate efforts. There weren't many friendlies left within the system, but the survivors seemed baffled by the Arxur's arrival. Perhaps they thought our onslaught was an inopportune coincidence. Attention, military personnel of the Dosur home system. I broadcasted my next message onto an open channel, and tried to eliminate any hostile words. The Arxur are here, at the behest of the United Nations, to aid you in defending your claim against the Federation. I will only warn you once, do not fire upon us. My pupils darted back to the screen, where I'd searched up Felra's file. The rodent's likeness was unmistakable in her documentation, and her present assignment was listed near the top. I searched up the space station number, pinning it down on a star chart. The rest of the battle faded away, as I raced to pull up that location on the viewport. The complex was nestled within an asteroid belt, which separated the inner and outer planets. A few dozen Federation attackers had tamed its meek defenses, and docked with the station to capture their inhabitants. The energy readings in the vicinity were fresh, suggesting that the Kolshians only put down spiteful, human, resistance in the past hour. There might still be time to save the dose, sir, if you hurry. I hurled the maximum output into my thrusters, and my shuttle blazed a path for Felra's station. A few Arxer vessels tailed their commander, though I figured they were baffled by a chief hunter leading the charge. This entire mission was going to raise questions I couldn't answer. Right now, I didn't have the time to waste on tack. The Federation vessels pulled away from the station, and met us for a head-on confrontation. I shirked the engagement altogether, leaving my underlings to duke it out with the prey. The sudden courage from the Kolshians surprised me. It was clear they were more competent than they let on. My eyes swelled with franticness, searching for an open docking port. There are none. I hissed to myself. None. I don't have time for a proper breaching action, I have to get down there. For fuck's sake, I'll make an opening. Scanning the station's blueprints, I identified a maintenance tunnel, which should be well clear of any living quarters. This shuttle carried 2 missiles, and I hoped the use of one would only demolish a wall. While station operators could seal off individual compartments, that also meant that I'd need a pressurized suit for oxygen. I tugged the emergency fabric on with haste, before donning a safety harness. With my biological requirements taken care of, I fired a missile into the station's exterior wall. The tunnel was exposed to the vacuum of space, its structure blasted wide open. Bullets clipped my rear flank, as Federation hostiles noticed my approach. Curses spewed from my maw, and I wrenched the steering column toward the new gap. The shuttle closed in on the Dosur space station, dodging enemy munitions. I held no interest in returning fire, that would increase the amount of time it took to reach Felra. My ship's nose dove through the opening, and I twisted the vessel's body to skid along the floor. Friction resulted in both an awful screech and shuddering sensation, before the tail slammed against a half-intact wall. My shoulder ached from the harness restraint, but I unclipped it without waiting. My suited paws tucked a firearm into a holster, and I slunk out into the station. The night backdrop of space was visible through the gap, as well as distant exchanges of munitions. Suffocating Kolshians and other Federation aliens lie gasping for air, alongside 2 Terran soldiers. I grabbed one human in each paw, and dragged them toward the section divider. The primates were lethargic and their expressions were locked in an empty display. There was nothing behind their eyes, with no oxygen coming to the brain. I opened the emergency compartment, throwing the weaker predators inside. Sealing the hatch behind me, I removed my oxygen helmet. The Terran's skin had been turning blue, though they were rapidly regaining normal coloration now. Hi. I swished my tail as politely as I could, and allowed the humans a moment to breathe. Chief Hunter Isif, at your service. Sorry about the unforeseeable depressurization. What are your names? One primate began reaching for her service weapon, and I hissed in irritation. My gun was out of its holster in a second, pointed at her in warning. Her hand remained frozen in place for a long second, before she submitted to my threat. I bared my teeth, a formidable warning rather than amusement. I scanned the perimeter for hostiles. How has your military experience been going? This was supposed to be a relaxing assignment. After watching the Harchan for weeks, Lisa complained. We were shipped here just in case, and the second we kick our boots off, in they come. Now the Arxer are here, telling fantastical stories that sound like Olek crafted them. Olek cleared his throat. They hit all of our allies with a test invasion. I hope it's not like this everywhere. I've grown attached to some friends on Venlil Prime. My source says this is the primary target. Venlil Prime is fine, I replied. That's a relief. Say, Isif the alleged secret agent, what convinced you to come here? You should tell us, since we're a team. We're not a team. Come on, you totally want to tell me. I've already told these two humans everything, just to get Felra's location. They might as well know the truth, if they're stalking me. They're going to notice that I know her. An internet chatting service. A doser is my best friend, I growled. Lisa's eyebrows furrowed. What? I'd hardly believe you'd dare to make a story like that up. I would not. Because it's insane. I scanned my visual translator over the text markings overhead, and it deciphered the doser language as directions with arrows. Just as Oleg had promised, the crew quarters were located down the main corridor. The passage had been devoid of confrontation, but gunfire echoed from up ahead. That meant Federation soldiers had already reached the living areas. The Kolshians must have sent forces down from two angles. One boarding party had been held in the maintenance tunnel that I detonated. The other likely attacked from the other side, charging straight from the hangar bay to the quarters. Splitting up human defenders was rather tactical, for a species that didn't know the meaning of offense. Allegedly. Which one is your supposed pal? Lisa pointed to a piece of paper, which I assumed contained room assignments. Also, I see a few dozen Kolshians and count 3 of us. Maybe we should rethink our strategy. The prototype visual translator had no trouble with the roll call, which listed Felra as room 219. I committed the doser symbols for that number to memory, knowing her life depended on it. My firearm wavered in my paws, and I dropped into a hunting crouch. The humans crept along as well, lining up enemies in their scopes. My pupils scanned each door for the numbers, while I ensured that my steps were silent. I could see cerulean and violet Kolshians moving between rooms, and exiting with sedated doser. All I could hope was that Felra wasn't among those already captured. It would be next to impossible to spring her from the Federation re-education party. My gaze drifted several doors down the hall, one room past where the Kolshians were now. I pointed with a claw. That one. My whisper was almost inaudible, but the humans understood the message. These Terrans were rather cooperative. I wondered if it was since they could gang up on me the second I made a move or was found to be deceitful. The primates often had a strange way of showing gratitude for saving their lives. I'd hauled their oxygen-deprived bodies from the tunnel, yet they were likely calculating ways to kill me. I can respect it at least. Unless I try to backstab them, I doubt they'll try anything stupid. Fighting the Federation is enough for now. Right now, the 3 of us needed to get past the Kolshian posse. The enemy soldiers stood between us and Felra's door. The thought crossed my mind to use the Terrans as a distraction, but I knew they'd see right through such suggestions. How were we going to reach my doser friend without alerting the invaders? A firefight seemed like the only solution, so I gestured for us to charge. My claw depressed the trigger, and I nailed 2 Kolshians in the back before they could react. Oleg and Lisa joined in on my fire, peppering any soldiers that couldn't find cover. The Federation got their bearings in a second, and hurled bullets back in our direction. We dropped down closer to the floor, crawling closer to Felra's door. Most hostiles had ducked inside the room they were currently raiding, but a few had moved on to the next quarters, room 219. I scurried past the first door, feeling static electricity as a bullet whizzed over my spine. Lisa offered suppressing fire, as a visually impaired Oleg scrambled after me. The Federation had gotten to the target ahead of us, but I couldn't stop. I fired desperate shots at the advancing soldiers. No. No. We're too close to let anything happen. Panic clamped at my heart, seeing 4 Kolshians kicking down Felra's door. I could hear a shrill scream, which lacked power or grit. Adrenaline flowed through my veins, alongside a deeper emotion of concern. I rounded the doorway in a fluid motion, and used my nostrils to pounce at a Federation lackey. My body was acting on pure autopilot, as I tore one soldier's throat on instinct. Felra's screams intensified, which encouraged my frenzy. If I was lucid, I would have realized she was shrieking because of my presence. However, in my haze, all I could see was two Kolshians cornering her, another was tracking the rodent's movements from further back. My tail swept across the floor, earning a sickening crack as it broke two Kolshians' ankles in one swoop. The enemy tracker turned his gun muzzle toward me, and I punched out a fist on instinct. My appendage connected with bones, while the scent of blood hit my nostrils. Vision sharpened, as the scent made my eyes dilate. I just shattered the Kolshian's windpipe and spine, with a single punch. The duo with the broken legs started to move, but Oleg rushed in to stop them from engaging. It was tempting to finish the helpless Kolshians off, however, enough of my awareness had returned to realize it had sickened Felra. I strained to bottle the adrenaline, drawing ragged gasps. "Help, human," the dosor managed to cry. Arxer." Oleg's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "I thought you said she was your friend?" "HRR," I grunted, struggling to formulate coherent words. The blood was still rushing in my ears, causing my claws to twitch. "It's complicated, is it not, Felra?" How do, no." Additional horror lit up the doser's gaze, as her terrified brain arrived at the truth. Something told me that she'd placed a name to the Arxer, who was towering over her with a maniacal snarl. I possessed a keen awareness of the blood slathered across my claws, and every scar and tooth fracture I had. The human watched from the sidelines, discerning enough of the subtext. Felra swayed on her feet. "Sci-fi?" "Yeah." The doser's eyes widened further than should be possible, and she passed out onto the floor. Memory transcription subject, Chief Hunter Isif, Arxer Dominion Sector Fleet. Date, Standardized Human Time, December 13, 2136. The fact that my appearance horrified Felra left me shaken, the primal rush of adrenaline quelled to something manageable. Bullets assailed the room's wall, as I was cornered alongside a doser and a near-blind human. The unconscious Kolshians, whose legs I had broken, were tied up to a desk as well. Oleg flashed his teeth, laughing at the absurdity of our encounter. The urge to roar in his face struck me, but I kept that bottled. With the gentlest touch I could manage, I scooped up Felra's tiny form. Her ginger-and-white fur felt puffy beneath my paws. Oleg marched over to me, snatching the doser out from under my claws. The human opened up his knapsack, and stuffed the herbivore inside. As much as it stung to have my friend taken away, I knew the primate was best equipped to carry her. The Kolshian soldiers were camped in an adjacent room, back in the direction we needed to travel. The 4 mangled corpses and crippled bodies in this room were my handiwork. It was a shame that Felra had witnessed the full brutality. I'd known from the moment we spoke in the chat that she would hate the real me. Interacting with her had been foolish, especially allowing myself to get attached. "So she's your friend, huh? But she didn't know you're an Arxer?" Oleg shouted, over the gunfire. My eyes formed menacing slits. A human of all people should know what it's like to be judged by your species. Also, it's none of your fucking business. If she was your friend, you would have told her. I just wanted to talk to someone. Fuck you. The Terran soldier rolled his eyes, and scratched the brown fuzz on his chin. Oleg's fur wrapped around his lip in what humans dubbed a mustache. It made his flushed cheeks stand out more. I imagined betterment would have culled someone like him, with vision defects that limited his daily function. What good was a hunter without depth perception? I didn't trust him to protect Felra. You'll have to cover for Oleg and Felra. And, assuming Lisa hasn't been gunned down, you have to protect her too. If one of the humans gets shot, the other won't leave them. I moved a mirror across Felra's room, and used it to get a peek at our attackers. Lisa was scooting back across the hallway, in the process of reloading her weapon. There was no crimson blood on the human's clothes, which was a positive sign. She had been skeptical of my intentions, so I wasn't sure whether I trusted her to be on my side. Why did you believe my story so fast? I hissed. Your partner isn't so sure. Oleg shrugged. It checks out. I knew they were up to something, or else, how did they get the Arxer to save Earth? That was my doing. Let's get Lisa and retrace our steps. You're only saving one dose, sir. There's others. The last time I saved some Zeruleans from a cattle farm, they cried and screamed at me. Wouldn't believe for a second that I didn't want to eat them. I'm here for my friend. We have to. The UN ordered me to help them. The best thing you can do for Earth is keep me alive. Move out. I didn't voice any of my concerns about Oleg's blindness. He seemed to be physically adequate otherwise. As a defective Arxer myself, I wasn't a supporter of killing the weak and infirm. If I were born a human, I could live a normal life. Felra would have cried for my help, rather than passing out at my visage. Shaking my maw, I took a final look in the mirror. My body was pressed against the floor, and I lined my gun barrel up with the Kolchans. A flurry of fire caused the enemy to hunker within their room. Oleg and I scrambled against the adjacent wall. Lisa spotted us, and sprayed her own bullets from the opposite angle. I steadied my breathing. Oleg and I waited for the Federation to make the first move. They wanted to finish sweeping the corridor, before any doser could escape. Just by stalling them, we were probably helping a few civilians get off the station. My patience was necessary in waiting for a target. A purple head poked out of the doorway, which resulted in a clean shot through its cranium. As the Kolchan crumpled to the floor, her body blocked the opening for a second. I pushed Oleg forward, crossing the threshold to a waiting Lisa. My legs sprinted right behind them, not slowing for a second. Engaging the enemy or delaying them for other doser was not my priority. We needed to get off this station. Where is the doser? Lisa chased after me, as Oleg hustled after us. Don't tell me we risked our asses for nothing. I struggled to speak between pants. Felra is, in Oleg's pack. Now my shuttle was still operational when I left. Your shuttle? The one in the blown-up tunnel, which took a nasty tumble. You ask many questions, and offer no solutions. We almost suffocated back there. I don't even remember how we got in that room. And I kept you alive. The two peacekeepers were hot on my heels, not tiring as we hurried down the hallway. Even with my longer legs, the humans were beginning to outpace me. My breaths were labored, and I was grateful that we reached the sector divider. The Kolchans hadn't attempted to pursue us, so it should be a clean getaway. The Terrans followed me into the emergency compartment, and their gazes displayed apprehension. I recovered my oxygen helmet, slipping it back over my head. The primates had no such safety precautions, so if I were a more ruthless Arxer, I could kill them in the airless area. They were dependent on me for survival. I don't trust Oleg and Lisa not to turn on me in the shuttle. My past experiences with humans haven't been all pleasant. The cruel, self-centered thoughts felt as heavy as a rock in my mind. Felra was safe in Oleg's bag, and I wasn't going to let the doser wonder what I did to the Terrans. I wrapped my claws around the two humans' shirt collars, ignoring their protests. Opening the airlock with my tail, I dragged them a few dozen paces to my shuttle. The primates would be crewing my shuttle, and that was the end of it. The four of us boarded the shuttle, and I tried not to fixate on what I would say to Felra when she awoke. The battle for Milo had not gone in our favor, just as I anticipated. There was shock value in an Arxer fleet coming to the doser's aid, but the Kolchans had brought the largest fleet in living memory. The typical strategies we employed to make the skittish Federation flee weren't having their usual effect. When the cowards didn't run off, their numerical advantage was insurmountable. The United Nations' efforts were concentrated on escorting evacuation ships, rather than holding the system. The fortunate news was that the Federation were not bombing the planet. their ground occupation meant this wasn't a life-or-death contest. We could compile a greater number of ships, and return to take the planet back. However, the Arxer's intervention need to draw to a close. Messages from Prophet Descendant Gizmal had flooded in, demanding to know why I defended Milo. He demanded that I withdraw all forces from the system, or he would send someone to dispose of me like Shaza. My execution was still on the table, especially if my rescue mission became known. All Arxer ships, Betterment has ordered us to pull back. These Dosur are not worth significant losses of this caliber. I looked at my data feed, surmising that our ship capacity had been halved. The Federation count had dropped by a few thousand, but our forces would be depleted sooner. Cover any Terran allies retreating from the system. If you can get off parting shots at the Federation, do it. A weak squeak filtered into my ears, and my head whipped around. Felra had been placed atop a wadded-up blanket, her tiny whiskers had been twitching in her slumber. Lisa was sitting next to her, wearing one of those asinine visors that humans caved to. A small part of me wished there was a mask that could hide my face. Even if I covered my optical receptors, the serrated teeth were a deal break. Human, the Dosur croaked. Where am I? Lisa pursed her lips with sympathy. You're on an evacuation shuttle. How much do you remember? Felra's eyes rolled back in her head, and she nibbled her lower lip. I could tell she was running through the details of the Federation attack, in chronological order. It was apparent when she hit the terrifying moment, when I had burst through the door to save her. Perhaps she didn't remember that the ghastly Arxer had used her pen pal's name. G. Gray snapped K. Kolshan's neck, she squeaked. Said it was, sci-fi. The Dosur's pupils surveyed the room, alight with panic. I quickly swiveled around in my chair, as her gaze landed on me. I wanted to melt into the floorboards, and cease my existence then and there. For some reason, her terror felt like a knife wound to the chest. What I'd told her on the messaging service was correct, I deserved to be alone. Lisa cleared her throat. Isif can't hurt you. You don't have to look at him. Felra sniffled. Isif? And not. Sci-fi is a nickname given to me by a Gojid child, I growled. A refugee who was taken in by a human. Someone I cared about on Earth. Great. Now you admitted your affection toward Nulia too. You're losing your grip. Sitting here now, the stupidity of my actions slapped me in the snout. Mobilizing an entire war fleet to defend the Dosur, all because of a few internet chats with a false premise, was insanity. Felra hated me, and she had every reason to. Her first impression of me was when I killed 4 Kolshans with natural weapons. The species she was actually intrigued by was sitting next to her, comforting her over me. The Dosur buried her head in the blanket, nose twitching. Tiny tears leaked from her eyes, and her sides rose and fell in shaking intervals. The human seemed to pity her, from what I could glean. Oleg was peering over the top of his book. Per the visual translator, the title read Why the United Nations Really Funded FTL Research. I had a vague curiosity as to the contents of the pages, but this was not the time to ask. I don't even think he's actually reading it, given that he can't see. He's just pretending not to stare at Felra. Oleg slammed his book shut. Maybe pipe down over there, sci-fi. You're only making it worse for her. I'm sorry, I mumbled. In the future, you should disclose to people that you're an Arxer, before you expect them to respond well to you. I told her I was a predator, I never once claimed to be human. I allowed the idea to linger, perhaps because I wish I truly was one of you. I wanted to talk to someone. Lisa studied the crying Dosur with concern. What made you think it was a good idea to talk to a Fed, not a human? We understand you, somewhat. Tarva, yes, the Venlil governor, thought I needed to understand herbivores. And also, you chatterbox tree swingers hate us. You can't keep the disgust out of your voice, when it's between us and the leaf lickers. You swoop in to protect them, just like you're doing now. Because we know you're animals. My sister was in a bunker outside Barcelona, and you Greys arrived to clear the tunnel. They watched you pull small animals from the grass, and eat them live. A few cats were swallowed whole. Companion animals, sensitive topic, yes? Alas, they do not know what I understand about your cats and dogs. Cultural misunderstanding, which I will not make. I'm going to stop you right there. Wolfing down a kitten is not a cultural misunderstanding, Oleg chimed in. A cultural misunderstanding is giving the thumbs up gesture, and not realizing it's a middle finger in some countries. The difference is, there's no death or animals getting eaten in my example. Felra shrieked in irritation. Stop. Shut up. A veil of silence was draped across the room. It would be comical for an outside observer to witness the tiny rodent, silencing 3 predators with a single order. I was relieved that the doser regained her composure enough to make demands. My eyes studied her tiny form, as she lifted her tear-stained head. To censor myself as humans do, Felra quoted. The constant mention of scaring me off. He fucking told me. He? Gendered pronouns? I've watched VVids about humans. I know how they act, the doser continued. And I noticed that sci-fi was not like them. He said he wasn't like them, multiple times. I blinked several times. I am not like them. If you wish for someone to coddle you in a baby voice, you'll have to issue that request to them. Don't tell them about that. Sorry. Too late. Oleg and Lisa shared a look of pure confusion, mouthing a few words to each other. The male human mimicked an adoring expression, and stretched his binocular eyes wide. He mimed a petting motion, running his rough palm down his book cover. Lisa snickered, before waving a hand in front of her throat. The doser whined in annoyance. If Felra was a Terran, her cheeks would be flush with embarrassment. Damn it. Why are you here, sci-fi? Felra focused her attention on me, and her whiskers twitched with fear. What are you going to do with me? My nostrils flared. I do not know. I came to save you. I did not think past that, or about how to handle the consequences. I am not going to harm you, but... I cannot take you anywhere an Arxer would go. Just by coming here, I have ruined my cover. Betterment, that is our government's enforcement wing, will be suspicious of me at best. I might have just destroyed my chance at demolishing the Arxer Dominion from the inside. Back up. Demolish, Dominion? They are cruel, and they are starving us purposefully, so that we are animals, as Lisa said. It goes so far beyond that though, Felra. The reason all Arxer seem devoid of emotions or care is because Betterment culls anyone who exhibits empathy. It goes back to your question of whether I have predator disease. You definitely do. Actually, I am the lone Arxer tested by the United Nations to pass an empathy test. I guess I have prey disease. I've always had softer emotions, and I didn't find social contact grating like most of my kind. Hiding those two differences kept me alive. Most Arxer do tire of us talking to them, Lisa noted, because they are not interested in your mundane lives. Even I find it bizarre how you wage war on silence, though your kind are quite intriguing to me. At any rate, I have no way to make friends among my own people, and I doubt I could pass as human on your internet. Oleg chuckled. You definitely couldn't. Your speech comes off as stilted, and you don't seem to know the appropriate response to most things. I am a little short on practice. Formal speech is my sole outlet, yes. And the things I've done to survive justify calling me a monster, so in essence, I do deserve to be alone. However, it was nice to understand what friendship feels like for a brief moment. Thank you, Felra. I turned my attention back to the cabin controls, satisfied that I'd said my piece to the dosser. She had been an excellent friend, while our doomed relationship lasted. It was time for me to accept that my isolation was fated. This was why my defective side was dangerous. Everything I had worked to build was forfeit, including the friendship I'd forfeited it all for. My mind zoned out, as I set a course for Proxima Centauri, a system the Terrans used as a staging ground. I wasn't foolish enough to fly to Earth again, no matter how sorry Zhao claimed to be. However, Felra and these two humans needed to be dropped off in UN territory. After that, it was time to face my likely execution with dignity and grace. Even my smooth tongue would have a difficult time talking a way out of this with Gizsnell. He's livid. A handful of pricks registered at the tip of my tail, and startled me half to death. My conscious mind barely reacted in time to prevent a devastating lash. I froze up, trying to assess the situation. If those blasted primates were poking me with a sedative, I was going to rip their throats out this time. I wasn't keen on being in UN custody again. The poking sensation moved up my spine, as if tiny hooks were ascending my sloped posture. I inhaled heavily through my nostrils, scenting warm blood belonging to a dosser. What in the stars was Felra doing? It bewildered me that she'd left the comfort of her blanket, and the overprotective humans crowding it. Felra perched herself atop my skull, right behind my eyes. Okay. We're going to do this together, but you'll have to, tell me more about you. I'm sorry, what? I hissed in disbelief. You said you didn't think past saving me. I don't want anything to happen to you, so we should think about it now, together. I am sorry about Milo. You are under no obligation to speak with me or continue in this vein of friendship. I am incapable of leaving this ship at the moment, but I would let you mourn in peace. The Kolshians are re-educating my people. I'm not captured now, because of you. You're sci-fi, and I'm glad I know the truth. I can smell your fear, Felra. It is very potent. I am scared of the humans too, for what it's worth. I jabbed my tail toward the flimsy primates. Them? They're lousy predators. They couldn't hunt with their bare hands if they wanted to. Oleg can't even see. You broke my glasses, asshole, the male human protested. The Arxer would still cull you for needing vision goggles. Not that I agree with that. Lisa narrowed her eyes. What about me? Would I be on the chopping block? You ask too many questions, and you're repulsed by eating live animals. Most Arxer would space you, just for that. The female Terran snorted, as her pupils fixated on the dosser atop my head. Oleg's expression had gained a bit more levity too, since Felra made herself a physical accessory. Knowing how the human brain worked, the psychotic primates thought the sight was cute. Just having the rodent in my proximity probably made me adorable to them by extension. That thought didn't seem as repugnant to me as it once would. I couldn't believe that Felra still cared about me. I had a friend that accepted my defective, physical form. Maybe one day, she'd be able to approach me without reeking of terror. Venlil had grown acclimated to the humans, after all. With two humans warming up to me and a dosser's help, perhaps we could find a way to unseat Betterment. My sector hadn't been lost yet.